The story opens with a man named Terenzio bursting into Brussels airport, visibly shaken and in a rush. At first glance, it seems like he's running late for a flight, but that's far from the truth. He heads straight to the help desk, urgently asking for any ticket heading west. The earliest one available departs in 2 hours. Nevertheless, he purchases the ticket, not to travel, but just to gain access past the terminal gates. Elsewhere in the airport, popular influencer Inez is casually video chatting with a friend in New York. Mid-conversation, the friend suddenly begins choking and collapses unconscious on the screen. Inez is left in shock, unable to do anything. Outside the airport, viewers watching TV see something equally strange. News anchors and live show hosts collapsing on air. On one street, dozens of people are seen lying motionless. While the public assumes it's a prank or technical glitch, Terenzio knows better. It's time, he mutters, and makes his move toward the terminal. As a security guard momentarily looks away, Terenzio seizes his weapon and demands everyone clear the path. He charges toward a plane scheduled to leave for Moscow, which is only minutes from departure. Only a few passengers have boarded when Terenzio storms in, pointing the gun at them. Inside the cockpit, the pilot is missing, and the co-pilot, Mathieu, refuses to assist a hijacker. In a struggle for the weapon, a shot is fired, hitting Mathieu's palm and wounding him. Panic spreads through the cabin as passengers scream and scramble. Flight attendant Gabrielle tries to calm them down. Terenzio exits the cockpit, shouting if anyone on board can fly the plane. A woman named Sylvie steps up, though she admits she's only flown helicopters and is now retired. Under pressure, she and Mathieu take control of the aircraft and prepare for takeoff with all passengers on board. Due to the earlier gunshot, the plane's avionics are damaged, cutting off all external communication. Once airborne, Sylvie and Mathieu attempt to reason with Terenzio. He insists he's a NATO officer and knows something critical. Pressed for more, he reveals the terrifying truth. The sun's rays have become lethal. Starting from the next sunrise, anyone exposed, even indoors, will die. He says Japan and South Korea have already been affected, and their plane is racing against the sunrise. Neither Sylvie nor Mathieu believe his claims. They assume he's mentally unstable. Terenzio admits he must sound insane, but stands by every word. Meanwhile, Mathieu is losing a lot of blood, and his injury could become a serious issue. A passenger named Laura, a nurse who cares for an elderly man with dementia, steps in to help. With no medical supplies available, she cauterizes the wound with a heated knife. Mathieu screams in pain, and fear grows among the passengers. Knowing panic could spiral into chaos, Mathieu tells the passengers that they'll make an emergency stop as per Terenzio's demand, and then continue on to their original destination. Secretly, he hopes that fighter jets or NATO forces might intervene. However, Sylvie doubts any rescue is coming. Among the passengers is a man named Ayaz, who overhears talk of the sun and becomes suspicious. Then, an Arab passenger suddenly begins coughing and collapses. Ayaz moves in to assist, but cleverly uses the moment to grab Terenzio's gun. He locks Terenzio inside the restroom and demands the truth from Mathieu. Mathieu explains that they're heading to Iceland, a westerly direction chosen by Terenzio. There, the local police are expected to handle the situation, and everyone else will be freed. He also shares what Terenzio told them about the sun being deadly. This revelation shocks the passengers. Some begin recalling strange events from earlier that day, and concern for their families grows. Trying to bring order, Mathieu promises to protect everyone and assumes full responsibility as captain. As they attempt to land in Iceland, the plane receives no signal from air traffic control. As they descend, they see chaos on the runway. Planes have collided, people are running, and it's clear something has gone horribly wrong. Realizing they can't land there, they opt to reroute to Scotland, the only location within their remaining fuel range. Terenzio is brought out to explain further. He confesses that he overheard NATO officials discussing the solar threat. He doesn't know the science behind it, but what he does know is that if they want to live, they must keep flying west, away from the rising sun. Back in the cabin, the Arab man who collapsed earlier is barely breathing. With his last words, he whispers that he swallowed diamonds. Nurse Laura tries everything she can to save him but fails. Meanwhile, the plane pulls off a difficult emergency landing in Scotland, narrowly avoiding disaster. Outside, phones light up with missed calls and messages. The internet is flooded with horrifying news. The sunlight is killing people across the globe. Half the population is already dead. Those who remain are either fleeing or hiding underground, but reports suggest even bunkers aren't aren't safe anymore. Tuoti, the empty Scottish airport, the group is approached by 3 men claiming to be RAF servicemen. They say they need help, and time is short. With only 45 minutes before sunrise, the group decides to gather supplies and refuel for another westward flight. One of the passengers, Jakub, is an aircraft engineer. He begs to return to save his pregnant wife, but is persuaded to stay for the greater good. After gathering supplies and refueling, the plane takes off again. One of the supposed servicemen is a pilot who suggests flying away from the equator, where the sun rises slower. Their next destination is Canada, to refuel again and repair their broken radio system. Sometime later, the internet reconnects and everyone's phones begin buzzing. The passengers receive the final messages from loved ones who perished in Brussels. Among the heartbreak, someone stumbles upon an article that offers a possible explanation for the catastrophe. It blames the disaster on a reversal of the sun's polarity. A climate specialist on board, Horst, immediately understands what this means. He explains to the group that the sun's magnetic field naturally flips every 11 years, though the cause remains unclear. Historically, these reversals have had no major impact on Earth, which is why they haven't been studied extensively. But Horst notes a disturbing trend. The intensity of these flips has been weakening over the decades. He believes this time the reversal swung back too strongly in the opposite direction, and now the Earth is being bombarded by deadly gamma rays wherever sunlight falls. This, he theorizes, is what's killing people instantly. Unfortunately, the scientists who wrote the article are likely dead, so there's no way to verify the theory. While this sinks in, Ayaz uncovers a devastating truth. The 3 RAF servicemen they picked up in Scotland are not who they claimed to be. They're actually Afghan terrorists who had been arrested and were being deported. Tensions rise quickly. One of the men gets into a heated argument outside and shoves the elderly dementia patient, killing him. This earns him the scorn of the passengers. Sylvie and Mathieu quietly agree that they'll ditch the imposters at their next stop, Canada. Upon landing in a Canadian city, they learn they have just 2 hours before sunrise. The city is littered with the corpses of sunlight victims. The terrorists are tasked with finding replacement parts to repair the radio, but they insist on taking Gabriel and Jakub with them. Jakub, aware of the plan to abandon them, plays along. Gabriel, however, is kept in the dark. At the shop, Jakub locks the terrorists inside a back room, but Gabriel refuses to go with him, not understanding the situation. He doesn't waste time arguing. Jakub escapes alone, chased by the terrorists. He manages to board the plane just in time, but Gabriel is tragically left behind. As the plane takes off, the terrorists fire at it, and one bullet strikes a window. Thankfully, it only cracks. As long as they maintain steady altitude, it won't shatter. On board is Dominic, a young boy who is terminally ill. Ayaz tries to comfort him, but Dominic's protective mother, Zara, tells Ayaz to stay away. Suddenly, a radio signal breaks through. Someone from Hawaii is transmitting. The message is cut off, but it implies that survivors might be hiding in an underwater bunker. Mathieu wants to set course for Hawaii immediately, but Sylvie argues that risking everything on an unclear message would be reckless. Tensions rise again. Terenzio grows frustrated that the captain is making all the major decisions. A vote is held, and it's agreed that future decisions will be made democratically. Just when things seem to settle, warning alarms start blaring. The aircraft systems are malfunctioning. After investigating, Mathieu discovers that one of the terrorists has somehow latched himself to the plane's landing gear. If they attempt to land, it could cause a catastrophic crash. He decides to fly the plane to high altitude, hoping that the extreme cold and low oxygen will kill the stowaway. But he forgets about the cracked window. The pressure difference causes it to shatter. The cabin erupts into chaos as oxygen and loose items are sucked out. Mathieu dives to a lower altitude to stabilize the pressure, and Jakub quickly seals the opening with a wooden panel. The crisis is temporarily averted. Unfortunately, Dominic's breathing tube was lost in the chaos. Ayaz quickly builds a makeshift respiratory device using an oxygen line. Zara, deeply grateful, regrets how she treated him earlier. Mathieu announces that Hawaii is no longer a viable option, not at their current altitude. Instead, they'll aim for Attu, a remote island off the coast of Alaska. Meanwhile, the terrorist hanging beneath the plane is still alive. Ayaz, Jakub, and Terenzio head to the undercarriage. They cut a hole in the floor to locate the stowaway. Terenzio points his gun, but the terrorist grabs it and nearly kills him. Ayaz manages to shoot the attacker just in time, saving Terenzio. Ayaz is briefly hailed as a hero until someone reveals reveals he's the reason the Arab passenger died earlier. Back in Canada, someone had seen Ayaz cutting open the man's stomach. Confronted, Ayaz confesses he's a con artist who was smuggling diamonds from Brussels to Moscow. The diamonds were inside the man's body with his consent, but the man panicked and died during the process. Some passengers demand that Ayaz be thrown off the plane, but after a vote, he's spared and handcuffed in the avionics bay. Later, they land in Alaska and refuel. In flight once more, Horst notices something disturbing. The fruit they collected in Canada has no taste. He theorizes that the gamma rays are altering the molecular structure of organic matter, reducing its nutritional value. If this continues, starvation may become their next crisis. Mathieu acknowledges the danger, but insists their priority remains outrunning the sun. His behavior grows increasingly erratic, and Sylvie becomes concerned. When she suggests he rest, he snaps at her, behavior completely out of character. The passengers decide to intervene. They pull him out of the cockpit and force him to sleep. Reluctantly, he agrees to rest for a few hours. While he's asleep, they intercept a new radio signal. They hear two voices in conversation and catch the phrase Stara 17. It doesn't make much sense at first, but someone realizes the voice belongs to a cosmonaut, a Russian astronaut still in orbit. That means someone on Earth must be communicating with him, likely from a command center. With renewed hope, they decide to head to the NATO headquarters in Brussels, where all of this first began. At their current speed, they'll have roughly 4 hours before sunrise once they land, just enough time to search for answers. Terenzio offers to guide them through the facility. Meanwhile, Laura discovers Mathieu unconscious in the lavatory. His hand injury has become infected, leading to blood poisoning, the real reason for his recent behavior. Laura says the infection must be treated immediately, possibly through surgical removal of the damaged tissue. But without Mathieu, Sylvie will have to land the plane on her own, something she's never done before. Despite her protests, the passengers beg her to try. Horst reminds her that without her, they'll all die. Motivated by the weight of responsibility, Sylvie watches several tutorial videos on emergency landings. But when the moment arrives, she panics. Turbulence shakes the plane violently as everyone braces for the worst. Against all odds, Sylvie manages a rough but safe landing in Brussels. The passengers cheer and celebrate the small victory in the midst of global devastation. They waste no time and divide into 3 teams. 2 men stay behind to refuel the aircraft. Laura, Zara, and a small group rush Mathieu to the nearest hospital. Meanwhile, Terenzio, Ayaz, and another man named Rick head to the NATO headquarters. At the hospital, they find hallways filled with dead bodies, evidence of a last-minute panic before the disaster struck. Laura directs the group to ignore the chaos and focus on saving Mathieu. Zara takes the opportunity to collect essential medicines, both for her son and the group. At NATO, Terenzio leads them to the same conference room where he had once overheard the conversation that started it all. With time ticking down, they don't have the luxury of going through all the files. Rick turns his attention to the surveillance footage, hoping it holds the answers they desperately need. While Rick is reviewing surveillance footage at NATO headquarters, Terenzio and Ayaz are left alone. Tensions flare between the 2 men when Terenzio mocks Ayaz's Turkish heritage. The argument escalates into a physical fight. Terenzio strikes Ayaz, who falls hard, hitting his head and losing consciousness. Blood begins pooling beneath him. Unaware of what just happened, Rick continues searching through the security archives. Finally, he stumbles upon a critical recording, a meeting between high-ranking officials discussing a top-secret bunker located beneath a dam in Bulgaria. The name of the facility, Stara 17, the same phrase they picked up on the radio earlier. It's a solid lead, and potentially their last hope. As Rick prepares to share the discovery, Terenzio shows up, claiming Ayaz has already left. When Rick checks the security monitor, he sees Ayaz lying unconscious in a pool of blood. Fearful and shaken, he says nothing. With just 30 minutes until sunrise, the remaining survivors regroup at the airport and prepare for departure. Mathieu, though still weak, feels noticeably better after the emergency surgery. Terenzio informs everyone that Ayaz left ahead of them and that they no longer have the luxury to wait. The engines start with heavy hearts until a car screeches to a halt in front of the plane. Ayaz steps out, bloodied but alive. In the next scene, Terenzio is handcuffed and locked in the avionics bay bay. The passengers no longer trust him. Sylvie warns everyone that the plan to reach the Bulgarian bunker is risky. If it fails, they won't have enough fuel or daylight left to attempt another destination. Once they land, they'll only have 20 minutes to reach the bunker's entrance. While in the lavatory, Ayaz experiences a sudden seizure. It lasts only a few seconds, and he blames it on the head injury and blood loss. Still, he keeps it to himself, not wanting to alarm the others. Back outside, the group discusses what to do with Terenzio. Ayaz, despite everything, chooses mercy. He tells them to take Terenzio along. He doesn't want to carry the burden of condemning someone to death. Eventually, they land at a small airstrip in Bulgaria. 2 vehicles are prepared, and the passengers split into groups. Sylvie drives the lead car. Ayaz takes the wheel of the second. As they speed toward the dam, Ayaz suffers another seizure. This time while driving, his car crashes violently, leaving the passengers disoriented and panicked. The first vehicle, unaware, continues ahead, too far to turn back with the clock ticking. At a key intersection, Sylvie chooses the right turn, leading her group to a massive, half-open gate. When one passenger tries to touch it, a jolt of electricity sends him flying. The gate is electrified and only stays open while someone continuously presses a nearby button. Terenzio, determined to redeem himself, volunteers to stay behind and hold the button. Sylvie handcuffs him to the metal stand to prevent any betrayal. If the others arrive, he'll be forced to wait and help them. If not, he dies trying. Meanwhile, Ayaz and his group, confused and disoriented, take the left road at the same intersection. They arrive at a second gate on the opposite side of the dam, also electrified. Using whatever clothes and tools they have, they scale the gate and make their way toward the main structure. In the final moments, both groups, despite taking different paths, reach the same bunker entrance. They are met by armed military personnel who confirm the impossible. They're safe. At last, a sliver of hope. Outside, still handcuffed, Terenzio watches the sunrise break over the horizon. Knowing what's coming, he doesn't run. Instead, he looks up at the light and quietly asks for forgiveness. With dignity, he accepts his fate. As the first deadly rays touch him, he closes his eyes and is gone. Thank you for watching.